Welcome everybody. Nice to see you all again. And so today is going to be something a little bit different to begin with anyway, because I'm going to be talking about the solar year, because it's something that we don't talk about very much, that we don't cover very much. And so I thought it'd be an ideal time as we go into this Trecena of Tzi, as we kind of like going into Wayeb in a couple of days' time. This is the time to start talking about it, right? So, the 365-day count, the solar calendar, the solar year. It's interesting to see the way that this gears together. This is the thing that will give us a sum of 52 years when we work it in this way. Okay, now the reason why this all works out and how it works out is all just because of the mathematics of it. We have a 365-day year, and that is broken down into 18 months of 20 days plus 1 of 5 days. Okay, so these months, they do each have names. There are Quichean names for them. I'm not going to go over that or go into that right now. You'll see that on my site. You'll see it kind of like it pops up on like every month what the months are called. But each of these months will begin with the year bearer's name. So for example, right now we are in an year. And so each of the 18 months that have taken place since February 20th of last year all began on an day. Okay? So that gives us, being as they're 20-day periods, it's always going to come back to an day. Now, the calendar, or the 365 days, will then take us 5 days forward. So if we started on an day, we're going to go through Ach, Ish, Tzikin, Achmach, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then end up in Noach. So the next year will begin in Noach, and that gives us our total of 365 days. And it's these days here that we call Wayeb. Okay? These days, there's another, well, I find mathematics interesting. I kind of like it, get a bit obsessed with things like that. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is that as we follow this cycle of year lords, because of the 365 days, the 5 goes into 20 4 times. So this gives us a total possibility of 4 different days on which the new year can start. And these are what we call year lords. And different cultures, different times within Mesoamerica have used different year lords within the calendar. But generally, the accepted ones that we use here are Ik, Kech, and Noach. Okay, and we can follow that back a very long time. We can follow that back to like the classic era of the Maya to see that those are the year lords that they were using then. We also know that there are some other areas of Mexico that use some different ones and that kind of thing. But where we are, this is what we use, and we have done for a long time. So, 4 year lords. We know that we also have 13 numbers. And so 4 times 13 gives us 52, which gives us a large cycle of the year lords. Gives us 52 different possibilities. Now, we can look at beginning a cycle in any place. But one of the places we could see a cycle beginning was back in 2013. Because in 2013, we went into the year 1 Ik. Okay? And so from 1 Ik, the next year that comes around, 2014, was 2 Keer. 2015 was 3 E. 2016, 4 Nog. Okay, so now we've done our 4 year bearers. 2017 was 5 Ik. 2018 was 6 Keer. 2019, 7 E. That's what we're just finishing. And 2020 will be 8 Nog. Okay, so the interesting thing that we see is that as we go into this period of Wayeb at the end of the year, you remember that I said that these months are all going to begin on E. So it begins 3 E, 4 Ach, 5 Ish, 6 Tzikin, 7 Achmach. That's the Wayeb. And what do we see here? We see 3 Er, which was that year lord right there. Now, for me, the reason why I think this is interesting is because one of the ways of referring to the year lords that they use here is Mam, the grandfather. It's the grandfather that carries the load, the grandfather that shoulders the burden as they go through time, as we go through the year. And you can imagine that after working for nearly a year, grandfather is getting tired. Grandfather is getting worn out. And this is kind of like what we kind of like see. So he's done 13 20-day periods. That will take us from 20th of February to around about the 7th of November. He will then do another 5 20-day periods, which will take us from the 7th of November through to, let's say, the 14th of February. And then the Wayeb begins. And so this is 260 days, and this is 100 days. We then have this 5 days here. And by this point in time, grandfather is so tired, he can't really carry the year anymore. In fact, it may even be that he's dead by this point in time. So the only thing that's shouldering the burden of time at this point is this one. And what do we know about this one? Well, this is the one from 2015. So the way that I see this is kind of like, by the time we get around to Wayeb, which will begin on the 15th of February on 3 Er, it's like the only thing guiding the boat, the only one driving the ship, is the ghost of the old captain. And this is why these days are considered to be days which maybe the energy is not particularly conducive for doing anything big. So imagine that you're on a ship and that ship's in a storm, or you've got to navigate something. You actually want to be focusing, paying attention to what's going on. You want somebody who knows what they're doing in charge. What we have is the ghost of the old captain in charge. So it's kind of like, this is not the time when we want to start doing some kind of like intricate navigation. It's not the time when we want to be trying to go through the storm. It's a better time to drop anchor and just let that spirit be in charge and take some time to retreat. So the Wayeb time is a time when you will get some people will not leave their houses, will not light fires, they certainly won't do ceremonies, because the energy is considered to be too unpredictable. It's certainly something that, so it's a time to take stock. I also consider it to be a bit like, well, in England when I was growing up, that period between Christmas and New Year. That sort of like week or so when you don't really know what day it is, and kind of like that kind of thing. It's not a very productive time. It's best just to kind of lie low and take some stock. You can also take stock on what you've been doing in the last solar cycle. So Wayeb can be a time of reflection, to take stock of what's happened to you in the year 7 all the different processes that you've been through, everything that you've learned, everything that you've attached to, everything that you've detached from, all of these things. This is the time to do exactly that. And it's a private thing. It's not something to be done in public. It's something to retreat to your home space, take some time, work in your home if necessary. But that's what we use Wayeb for. It can also be a cleansing time, because it's a case of like getting rid of anything that you don't need to carry into the next year. Exactly the same way as I said, between Christmas and New Year in the Gregorian calendar, this is something that we can take some time to let go, to release. And at the end of Wayeb, we may also come to the conclusion and the understanding of what we want to bring in for the next year. What 7 has taken us to, and where 8 Noch will now take us to. Now, this is a interesting thing as well, because 7 is, I called it the end of the road. That's the year that we're in right now, 7 okay? We could see it as the path to the top of the pyramid. And at the top, when we're at the top of the pyramid, we're looking out over everything, everywhere we've journeyed and everywhere we want to go. So it's about making choices. Make a choice to which road you want to travel, which path you want to move on now. 7 is also seen as a number of death and endings. So it's kind of like coming to the end of a road. You know, we're coming to the top of the pyramid. When we come to the top of the pyramid, our journey is done. And we get to see what else is out there. The other pyramids may be in the distance that we want to take a different road to. So this has been a year of choices and decisions as to which path you want to follow. Bueno, muchas gracias, Fer. It may also have been to the point of my coffee. It may also have taken us to the point of where what's finished in our lives. Maybe there's a path that you've been walking for the majority of your life that you no longer wish to tread. Maybe that part of your life is done. Maybe it's time to move on from that. And so this is something where this year may have highlighted that. Hey. Hi. And so when you get that highlight coming, it's kind of like finishing something and seeing where you want to go. That's what this year has been about. And I'm sure that like many of us have had these kind of moments. It's like, right, okay, where are we going? And what are we going into? Well, we're going into 8 Noch. And what's that all about? Well, Noch is the mind, it's the brain. Noch is knowledge, intellect, logic, the ability to put all of these things together, the ability to come up with a plan. This is one of the things that I've particularly seen. And there are two of the year lords. Echne years and Noch years are said to be the more gentle of the years. The Ik years and Kech years, well, Ik years are turbulent. Kech years, well, that's the deer, so it's butting its way around all over the place. It's turning things upside down so that we can find the path again and bring our plan into action. And this is what I really see with the 8 Noch. The last time that we had a Noch year was 2016. That was 4 Noch. that was about taking the plan and putting it into a physical reality. But the 4 is this kind of like square planar thing. The 4 is something which, yeah, sure, it's like putting down the foundation for the plan. The 8 is bringing it to wholeness, bringing it to its full fruition. So 8 Noch I see as a particularly favourable year for getting your plan out there, getting your whole plan out there, putting things into action. So this is something where 7 Ech has made us, we've chosen our path, we've made our decisions about which path that we want to tread. And now 8 Noch is like taking it and putting it into action, engaging with it. And it's engaging with the whole plan, the whole idea. The 8, we can see, I kind of see it like that. There's the 1, there's the 7. 1 is birth, it takes us into that cycle. 7 is death, and it takes us into that cycle. So the 8 is the wholeness of the cycle. Noch is about intellect, about knowledge, about logic. So it's about using your whole brain in one way. Bringing the whole plan together, bringing the whole idea into the place. So if there's something that you've been sort of trying to hatch for the last few years or something, and you've found that the Ik year probably wasn't the time for it, and the Kech year, not so much either. The 7 Ech year has given us a better view of it, and it's the 8 Noch year that we can really start to do things. So again, if you have a project, a plan, an idea in the pipeline right now, and you're about to launch, it would be a good idea to wait until 8 Noch comes around on the 20th of February to actually go into it, to actually kind of like set it down, because that's when it feels like everything comes in. Now, they say the first month of the year is called Nabe Mam. And there's a thing that we see here when the new Mooney takes over, is that sometimes for a little while there's no water or something like that happens because there's new staff coming in and they don't know all the systems. So the first 20 days of 8 Noch are also days where just take it easy. You're getting into a new vehicle, you're just starting to drive it, you're just starting to work out how you're going to implement that plan into action. So it's, you know, not necessarily a time to go racing straight for it, but we should start to see that over the course of the next few days after, after Nabe Mam has passed, that's when everything starts to come into action.